So hi everyone, good evening. Thanks for joining the session. So what we'll try and cover in this session is how we go about doing the task that is assigned for round one of the ACUMO Finathon. Just stepping back before that, so overall the contest will have three parts, three rounds. The first round, which is what we'll discuss today, will be intra-school, it will be individual, it will be submission based. So we'll send across a quick note which will detail how exactly to do the submission. Mostly we'll ask you to upload your files to a Google Drive, and we'll send the link for that, and then we'll evaluate that. Once round one is completed, we'll evaluate within a couple of days or 2 or 3 days after you complete the submission. We'll have round two, which will be at a regional level, and round two will happen online, but it will happen in teams of two representing each school. So round two will essentially be a financial planning contest, which we'll give the details for after round one is completed. And then round three will be at a national level, which will be held at IIMB. And that will essentially be a refinement of round two. So that's, in a nutshell, the overall Finathon. Round one, round two, round three. Round one is intra-school. So round one, essentially the mandate here was to build a personal finance sheet, which helps you project what your net wealth would be by the time you hit 40, or let's say with about 20 years of work experience. So that's the overall picture. And what we try to do is we put together a small sample template kind of a Google Sheet. We would prefer if you do it using a Google Sheet because that's much easier to share and work on. And we prepared a sample template. We'll go through it. I'll explain some of the things to you. We'll also give you a sense of how exactly you can go about and structure it. But we've intentionally left out several things for you to figure out. And that's what we want to see, how deep you go. There is absolutely no restriction with what help you can take. You can speak to your teachers, you can speak to your parents, you can even check with ChatGPT, do whatever you want, do your research, think through comprehensively, and then complete the exercise. I'll do this at the end as well, but we will essentially evaluate entries on the basis of, number one, how comprehensively things have been put together, how well the model has been created, what kind of insights the model is throwing up, and how clearly is it being able to convey the overall plan that is there. So that's the overall picture that is there. Let me just hold it silent. So what we'll now do is if there are any questions, I'll stop for a bit. Otherwise, we'll dive straight into the Google Sheet. Anybody, before we start, any top of the mind questions that you all have so that we have a sense before we get into the details? No one? Okay, perfect. So let me start sharing my screen. Is my screen visible now?
Yeah,
Can
it's
somebody please
visible.
confirm? Oh, okay.
It's visible.
So perfect. So what we'll do is, so if you think about a personal finance sheet that you're going to project, so there are 3 or 4 elements here that you absolutely need to take into account. And we'll try and go structure it along those lines so that then it becomes easier for people to build from there. Again, bear in mind that these are thought starters. It helps you get started, but this is not necessarily completely prescriptive in the sense that this is not what you want or what you need to submit, but this is just a suggestion in terms of how you can start thinking about it. So the first thing you need to think of is income. So where will your money come from? So this is where you need to put down assumptions of roughly what kind of a career do you want to pursue? What does it mean in terms of a starting salary there? What kind of place will you live in? Will you live with your parents? Will you live outside? What kind of a growth that you can assume over there? So I've just put this, assuming that if there is a student who wants to be a lawyer. So let's say you start as an intern with a corporate law firm based out of Bombay. Your career begins at 22. There are no breaks in your career. And your salaries and growth are commensurate with what would happen with a high-performing corporate lawyer. This means that you have to go out and figure out what does a typical lawyer make and what kind of career progressions are there and how the salaries increase and so on and so forth. So that's on income. The second thing that you need to take into account is expenses. So actually, before we go on to expenses, any questions on income? So we'll essentially cover income, we'll cover expenses, we'll cover investments, and we'll give you a sense of how to model this entire thing out, and then we can take any questions at any point in time. So the first part is income. The second part that we need to obviously consider is expenses. So if you're, let's say, in this case that we were building up, right? You're staying at a place away from home, so expense heads would include rent, groceries, entertainment. You could also assume that you're sharing a co-living space with somebody else. You could also have to assume that your expense heads will change as life progresses, because 20 years is a fairly long period of time. You could include EMIs and other purchases as and when they happen. So that's your expense track, which would continue. So there is an income track, there is an expense track. Similar to this, there would be an investment track. Now, we've intentionally not put anything here, but there's something we want you to think about and plan about how that would happen year on year. How the model would be built? It would be built assuming certain things which would happen year on year and which would change from year to year. And then at the end of every year, you would have a certain corpus that, depending on what has happened every year, will either increase or decrease or remain the same. That's the final corpus that you need to project for, say, 20 years. And that's the number that you need to model for. Clear so far? Okay. So I'm assuming that when nobody's saying anything, it's all clear. So if we go to the wealth building model, so now here, essentially what we would want you to do is to put your assumptions here. And the assumptions should follow a similar track as what we spoke about in the description. So your assumptions with regard to income, your assumptions with regard to investments, your assumptions with regard to tax, and your assumptions with regard to investments. So you can put any other assumptions that you want to over here as well. And this is where we want people to think through what other parameters that can be there that will impact your overall net worth. Once you have your assumptions in place, we want you to do a set of calculations like this. So let me just show you how one set would work. So let's assume that if you join as an intern at a law firm, you join at a salary of 12 lakhs per annum. So which is your salary in year one. And then what we are saying is your salary growth will be at 20% for the first couple of years and then 12% and 10%. So these are all assumptions. Okay. So basis that, how I would project is, now I'll come to my calculation section where I would say the salary in the first year is simply the cell which is on top, which is this, right? Then the salary in the next year should be whatever I had in this year times the percentage growth rate which I'm taking here, right? And then this gets projected for the remainder of the time period. Is that clear so far? Let me put it the other way around. Anybody has any questions so far? Is it all clear? Okay. Nobody has any questions.
My question first. Yeah. Okay. So Sanvi's asked, will this Excel be provided to us?
Yeah. So we'll give this Excel to you. This is a Google Sheet. I'll share the link for this. This will be a view-only Google Sheet. I'll send the link to Devjani ma'am, and she can share it with the rest of you.
So my question is, you've broken into two segments. One is the assumption part, and you've highlighted it, colored it. So reason for that?
So the reason for that is, so typically best practice is that whenever you make a Google Sheet or any model, there are 2 or 3 parts that should be kept segregated. The first part is a description, which is the first sheet that we went through, which should lay out your approach and how you want to set up the entire model. That's why. The second part is your assumptions. So which is where all your assumptions, all your thinking should come in here in terms of the inputs and the numbers that you're taking. And then there should be a calculation in an output section, which is the one starting from row number 17, let's say. So essentially the idea is that whenever you want to make a change to a model, you just need to change the assumptions and then everything else should flow accordingly.
So could you just show it once by changing that 20%
so for
to
example,
25?
let's say if I make this 15, right? So then all my numbers have changed over here. Okay. Or if I make this 20% for the first 5 years, let's say. Just keep an eye on row number 18, right? So if I change this, then all these numbers change. So that's why it's structured. So ideally, there's a good point actually. So we should ideally expect there to be a description sheet which kind of lays out your approach in terms of how you want to model the entire personal finance segment out. Okay. What are the questions? I'm looking at the screen, so I am not able to see the messages, Abhishek. Any other messages? Anything else people have put up?
As of now, they just wanted to know whether the Excel sheet will be provided or not.
Yeah, tell me please. You can say.
Yeah, so the format that we have to submit the model in will be the same as this, like an Excel sheet and a presentation.
Like a Google Sheet. You don't
Yeah.
need to make a presentation. If you feel a presentation will help you, you can go ahead and make it. So you can submit both. But just a Google Sheet is good enough with the proper description, and it should be well laid out.
Yeah.
It should be
Okay.
presentable. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you.
Sure. Arav,
So one question is that we'll provide values in the assumptions. Are they needed to be justified?
ideally, yes, but that's okay. These are assumptions you're putting in. If you put these assumptions and you describe it, that's better because then you're thinking through what you're putting up and you're not just putting any numbers randomly.
Yeah, just one thing here. So let's say we want your model to be research based also. So just like Faiz has mentioned, a lawyer after let's say finishing 5 years of law. Now we don't expect you to put a value like 80 lakhs a year. That's not reasonable, right? So basically, we want you to put some thought also, some research also in it. So if you're saying a banker, and the research is very easy, it's not very difficult. Just figure out the closer it comes to the value, the better it is, right?
You can
We will
speak to
not
your
pin a hair.
parents, they can
Yeah.
guide you in the right direction. You speak to ma'am, they can guide you. I mean, she'll be able to guide you. If you want
Yeah.
any guidance from us, any questions from us, please send me a mail, send us any questions, and we'll be happy to respond immediately.
As you said, you can use take help from your teachers, from your parents, even AI. One question about the template is we are sharing this template, but you can come up with your own Excel sheet model also. It's not that you have to follow this only.
Okay, so I
I have
think
a question.
yeah, please go on.
So you said that it would be better if we justified like the assumptions that we make on the values. So if we do justify it, then where do we like write this justification? Like where do we mention it in this doc?
You can put it as a comment here. So you can every cell you can easily add a comment. So
Okay, fine. Okay.
researched on the basis of X, Y, Z, right? Or you can
Oh,
put it in the
description
description.
sheet.
Okay.
And
Personally
this,
speaking, I prefer if all justifications, everything, all rationale is put in the description sheet. So then the model is completely clean.
okay. Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Also, for how many years are we meant to model the
20 years.
20 years? Thank you.
Okay. A couple of other people have their hands raised. I think Arab had raised. I can see Advika.
Sorry,
Advika, go on,
you just
please.
answered me. Sorry, I'll just lower it.
Okay, okay. Anyone else? So to continue, I just want to give a couple more examples so you get a sense of it. So let's say
So
if we take,
one more question. Sorry, Faiz.
yeah,
So
yeah,
the whole point. So the question is from. One second. So the question is from Myra. So the whole point is to make a assumption on the salary and other expenses that come with it.
okay. So it's not just about this. There can be a bunch of other things also. So we want you to make a set of assumptions. We need to make the calculations around those assumptions and also think about other things that we have not necessarily put down over here. That's essentially what will differentiate the entries that come for the competition.
Yeah. So basically, corpus is a function of three broad heads. So we've just given you an example of that. So under income, you might have some other head also. We're just saying salary. But let's say some of you may be running your own business, right? So there could be other heads of your inflow. So focus on that. So similarly for expenses and investment. Sanjay has asked, when do we have to submit the spreadsheet? So Faiz, I think by 9th or 10th is the upper
Yeah,
limit.
so let's make it 10th.
10th.
So yeah, so 10th, which is end of the weekend, and then that's
Yeah.
when we'll cut off the.
Yeah, we share
We'll
the
se-
submission process with you separately. We have your contact details with us, so maybe we'll form a WhatsApp group with your ma'am here, and then we'll share the submission requirements.
Where do we submit the model? So that we've addressed. Acha, what you guys can use to make it, you can use a Google Sheet or you can use Excel as well, whatever you prefer. I think you'll start to use Google Sheets pretty early, so that's a good option. You can stick to that. So I'll just continue. I'll close out one more calculation just to give people a sense. So let's assume the rent per month is 25,000 in the first year, 27,000, 28,000, and so on and so forth. And let's assume suddenly it jumps because somebody decides to get married by age 27 or whatever, right? So then what you need to do is your rent line should then therefore draw from that assumption line and do a multiplication by 12 to get the annual. Okay. And then finally, at the end of everything, so at the end of the first year, you would have a certain amount of income, you would have a certain amount of expenses, and you would have a certain corpus. Now, let's assume if you're starting off from ground zero, then you don't have any corpus to begin with. So then that's what your corpus becomes at the end of the first year. The second year, whatever you have at the end of the first year is what your beginning corpus is. And then whatever you do with it in the second year is what results in your corpus at the end of the second year, along with the income and the expenses that happen in the second year. And that's how you need to build it year on year. Right? Questions around that? Anything? I think that's pretty sorted then, right? Anything, ma'am, anything that comes to your mind? Is this reasonably okay for people to then build from?
Yeah, I think this doesn't look that complicated. I feel our students can handle it. I just had one question. So do they have to factor in like inflation rate and all that?
Yes,
Or
yes. So that's
okay.
that's what this is intended as a thought starter. And then after that, it can get as realistic or as involved and complicated as people can make it.
Okay.
So there are several things that we haven't mentioned here, which I'm intentionally not saying even now. So which is what we want to see, what people think of for themselves and then build out.
So I'm a little challenged, but yeah, I mean, let's see what they do. Yeah.
Students, any thoughts? Are you guys reasonably clear? Are you thinking of what else you can build out? Yeah, Advika, go on, please.
So, like, for example, we do take into account the inflation rate. Would we have to like mention, like, where do we
Yes,
like,
you
for
should.
example, mention
You
this
should
rate?
include it as an assumption line.
So in like the first sheet itself.
The first sheet, you should mention in the first sheet when you're describing it. So for
Okay.
example, therefore you would say that, let's say if there is a certain amount of money you're spending on groceries, right? And then you would think that if this is the assumption around groceries, then that needs to increase by a certain percentage year on year. What is that percentage? That's inflation. So you need to mention that in the description, then you need to put the number over here it'll probably come as another line somewhere here. So,
I think,
ma'am mentioned inflation.
yeah.
Yeah, go on, ma'am, please.
Yeah, no, I had one more question, which I think a student asked me that when they talk about their investments, should they look at investments in the Indian market or can they invest like anywhere in the world?
They could
And
invest
someone asked
anywhere.
me that.
They could invest
Okay.
anywhere because there are enough and more platforms for you to invest. But if you're
Okay.
investing anywhere, you should mention where and what is the tool you're going to use. Again,
Okay.
part of the description.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
I'll stop sharing now. Get back to the screen. So I think we pretty much covered the overall content. Yeah, go on, please.
Yeah, so regarding like the description of income and everything, can we get a bit niche as well? Like maybe mentioning how a person works a second job or something.
Yes, please do. Please do model it out, show us.
Okay.
Get
Thank
as niche as you want. Cool. Anyone else? Right, ma'am, then we'll close the session then. I think that's pretty much it from our side. I think that covers all the points that we wanted to cover.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Fayaz. I hope this answers all your questions, students. As Mr. Fayaz said, maybe also you can email. They can email you, right? If they have a
Yes,
question, I'll share
absolutely.
your email with them.
Yeah, you can do that, or yeah.
Yeah.
If they can consolidate their queries and give you, that'll be easier for me. But otherwise, also it's fine. You can share.
Yeah.
Not an issue.
And then you will be sharing the details as to when and where they have to submit,
Yes.
right?
We'll probably form like a WhatsApp group since we have all the numbers, and we just put it there so that then it becomes easier to coordinate as well. We'll add you as
Okay.
well onto the WhatsApp group.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Sounds
right.
good.